Although I think flatbreads are superior, but that's a personal choice, right? Like, but how does religion, like, what role does religion play in the cultural exchanges?
Religion plays a hugely important role, particularly for Rowe. So Thomas Rowe is a Protestant Englishman, and he's particularly interesting because he belongs to a faction of Protestant English men in power in this period who kind of think that England should be doing more about pushing the cause of Protestantism, not only within England, but globally, and certainly against their Catholic competitors. So quite often, even discussions around trade become discussions around religion at the same time throughout this period. And it's across the globe, essentially. So, English trade merchants will say, well, look at the Spanish. They're establishing their bases in South America, and we need to do the same in North America for the sake of the Protestant cause, and also because it earns us loads more money.
Money, yeah.
Yeah. So those two get complicated. Similarly, in India, when Rowe goes to India, the Portuguese have been in India for over a century by this period. And for Rowe, those two causes, the Protestant cause and his competition, his sense of anxiety about Portuguese Catholic power, go very much hand in hand. In terms of the Mughals, the interesting thing, of course, is that the Mughals themselves are fairly new in India. Jahangir is the fourth Mughal emperor. And one of the things as Islamic sovereigns, they soon realize, in fact, Jahangir's father, Akbar, is the one who really realizes this fairly early on, is that there is really no way of establishing a uniform Islamic empire over the subcontinent. That may well be an ideal, but in pragmatic grounds, it's never going to happen. Given the sheer expanse of this, remember, 1.224 million square miles, that sheer geographical expanse. So the Mughals, throughout this period, have this practice, which is both intellectual but also very pragmatic, of creating a degree of flexibility around religions. So Akbar himself, who was deeply interested in multiple religions, would have these religious dialogues where he would bring Hindus and Sikhs and Muslims together and Buddhists, let them debate out philosophical questions at his court. Jahangir is less interested in the intellectual perspective, but he certainly takes the point that actually pragmatically you need people to do their business on their own terms. That does not mean that there is no inequality and there's no violence. Of course, there is always inequality and violence in any kind of statecraft in this period. However, for Rowe, this is really, really new. And not just for Rowe, for all Englishmen in this period. Coming from this tiny Protestant state, which is so deeply paranoid about letting any other alternative voices erupt within its space, they come to Mughal India and they are absolutely fascinated by this idea that you can have alternative religious presences. And not only that, those presences can actually coexist in the same place. So Ajmer, where Jahangir holds his court for the greater part of Rowe's embassy, is a huge Sufi Islamic presence. It's a Sufi pilgrimage site, but only half a day's ride out is Pushkar, which has been a Hindu pilgrimage spot for centuries, essentially. When Rowe comes back, that lesson stays with him for years, decades. Even at the end of his career, he's telling Charles I that the only way you can resolve your, little financial crisis, which is heading the country towards civil war, is to copy the example of the Mughal emperor and let people coexist and do their business without meddling in their religious lives.